It was supposed to be just another soft-focused TLC moment. Kody, Robyn, and the kids having a quiet lunch in the garden. But that calm afternoon never made it to the air. And once the cameras went off, everything changed. Welcome back to TLC's next chapter. I'm Emma. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what was the moment that finally made you stop rooting for Kody Brown? Now, let's get into what actually happened. The garden setting was meant to temper the public's opinion, to ease the escalating tension that fans already felt between the Browns. But it opened a pressure cooker instead. Dayton, Robyn's eldest, who'd always struggled being on camera, finally hit a wall. He refused to wear the mic. He paced, restless, clearly on edge. When the cameraman slowly moved the lens toward him, Dayton snapped. "Just gently," he barked. "You're not filming me anymore." Then, raw, unfiltered, he exploded. "She's being poisoned by you. All of us are." And then he lunged. In the mayhem, a crew member went down. Blood, screaming. And Kody, instead of stepping in to defend his son, he stormed off. Not to assist, not to defuse, to berate the crew. That was the moment that things broke. In hours of the garden shoot breaking apart, TLC executives weren't merely responding. They were frantic. A lockdown emergency meeting took place at their Burbank headquarters. This wasn't about saving anything anymore. No more spin, no more saving face. Julia Wright, the veteran executive producer, was candid. "Kody, we're done," she said. "We're not building a show around your crumbling ego anymore. One of our crew is in the hospital. You've turned this entire family into a war zone." And just like that, Kody Brown, once the central figure of Sister Wives, was cut off. In Flagstaff, meanwhile, Kody remained rooted in his home office. The walls still contained framed family portraits, photos that no longer accurately represented reality. The pricey leather chairs he used to purchase to make an impression, now, they just appeared to be clutter. He didn't budge. For hours, he hardly blinked. A while later that evening, Robyn caught him slumped in his chair. There was a half bottle of whiskey next to him. The breakdown of a man in slow motion. His jaw was so tight, it seemed that he was chewing his teeth just to keep himself from losing control. "They assassinated me," he muttered, his eyes wide and manic. "They destroyed my legacy." But this time, Robyn didn't get up to comfort him. She remained firm, arms crossed, voice soft, but frosty. "Kody, you murdered your own legacy." It was the first time she'd ever addressed him that way. And it would be the last time she'd address him as his partner. "Dayton and I are gone," she told him. "We're going to St. George. Don't call, don't track. And don't you dare try to spin this as some kind of redemption story." Kody didn't respond initially. Then, in the blink of an eye, he sprang up, his eyes crazed. Whether Robyn was being unfaithful to him, as well now. But she said nothing. She didn't need to. The one wife who had remained with him after all the others had walked away was leaving at last, and taking Dayton with her. The one child Kody hadn't saved. The one he'd lost. And suddenly, the balance tipped. No longer the patriarch, no longer the head of anything. Kody Brown was just a man, alone, tormented by the ghosts of all that he'd shattered. Meri Brown had bitten her tongue for over a decade, playing the dutiful wife, trying her hardest to hold together a broken family. But something within her had changed too. Perhaps it was years of quiet sorrow finally coming to the surface. Perhaps it was seeing her own life erased, repeatedly, as Robyn's story played on repeat. Whatever it was, Meri was finished. But this time, she wasn't simply disappearing into the shadows. She was walking straight into the light. What began as a personal memoir, stored away for years, became something grander. A 6-part tell-all series. Uncensored, honest, and utterly unfiltered. TLC, now in a desperate move to salvage a sinking franchise, gave the go-ahead. No script, no editing, just Meri and everything. The first episode landed like a bombshell. Meri sat alone in a modest studio outside Salt Lake City, calm but visibly weathered. She stared straight into the camera, back upright, voice unwavering. "They told my story for years," she said. "Now, I'm telling it myself." And then came the twist no one saw coming. Robyn had locked in a private deal with TLC as far back as season 8, guaranteeing extra pay anytime emotionally charged scenes with her kids aired. All of it carefully designed to build her image as the suffering wife, the victim at the center of the storm. Meri's pain, long buried, was finally being acknowledged. She spoke openly about the time TLC completely erased her grief recovery. It was a scene for an episode, one in which Meri had bared her soul. But it never aired. In the meantime, Robyn's scenes continued to be padded out. That, Meri subsequently confessed, was when it dawned on her. The narrative was never hers to control. The entire story had been orchestrated. Social media blew up. Footage from her confession ran rampant on TikTok and Reddit. Fans were shocked, some devastated, some outraged. The woman they used to think was passive was now the voice of truth. Watchers weren't viewing anymore. They were rallying around her. And with that first confessional, Meri didn't just get back her voice. She flipped the whole script. When it looked like the sister wives dynasty would collapse under the pressure of betrayal, scandals, and broken trust, TLC did the unthinkable. They took charge from the very women who had been pushed to the sidelines for more than a decade. Meri, Christine, Janelle, no longer extras in Kody Brown's self-destructive saga, they emerged as the stars. And with that moment, the franchise was revived. A new title, a new path, a new era, Sister Wives reclaimed. This was not simply a title change. It was a revolution. The tone changed, the narrative changed, the power had shifted, and it could not be overlooked. These women were no longer merely surviving. They were speaking out, creating businesses, raising their children, and for the very first time, living for themselves. The message rang clear and loud. This was no longer Kody's show. It was theirs. And then there was the billboard. In the middle of Times Square, bold, giant, impossible to miss, there stood Meri Brown, wind blowing through her hair, arms crossed, eyes defiant. The news was brief, piercing, indelible. The real wife, Meri Brown. She's done waiting. The internet went berserk. Viewers poured back, ratings through the roof, and for the first time in years, folks weren't watching to see a slow disintegration. They were seeing a climb. In the meantime, Kody went out of his way to disappear. No more tirades to camera. No more loyalty or betrayal monologues. His podcast sputtered after a handful of episodes. His YouTube channel vanished within a week. Comments were closed off. The listeners had stopped. And sincerely, he did not appear to have very much more to say. Robyn remained quiet. No press releases, no posts, no interviews, just silence. Dayton, her son, went about quietly seeing a therapist and remaining to himself. The house that hummed with production. The crews had departed. The tension that used to hum among family members, deafeningly silent. What was once the epicenter of the Brown family's mayhem now seemed utterly empty. A ghost town. But amidst that quiet, the women's voices just got louder. Sister Wives, reclaimed, was more than a clever title. It was a statement. Justice had finally come. After decades of living under the shadow of family trouble and constant media scrutiny, Janelle Brown did more than discover a fresh start. She took it. During the pandemic, Janelle took a bold step to leave behind the comfortable chaos and start something of her own. She moved to North Carolina, creating distance both physical and emotional from the devastation of Flagstaff. There, she set the literal groundwork for what came next. Janelle constructed a house with her own 2 hands, a metaphor for strength, resilience, and recovery. No news crews, no drama, simply the soft strength of a woman taking full control of her own narrative. But it wasn't all about mortar and steel. Janelle started a new set of business endeavors. plunging into everything from life coaching to interior decorating. She wasn't getting by anymore. She was thriving. Then there was the last chapter in Kody Pass's saga, the land that had for so long symbolized common dreams and perpetual power struggles. It was finally divided. What had been for so long a symbol of strife was now a line drawn with precision. Janelle didn't simply walk away strong. She walked away financially secure and at peace. It was a clean break, and it said it all about her commitment to defending her future. In 2025, Janelle publicly committed to something that resonated with fans. She committed to eradicating all toxicity from her life, and she wasn't kidding. No lip service, no show. She followed through by moving away from drama, cutting off from toxic dynamics, and completely focusing on healing and growth. Janelle's journey revealed something really beautiful. She's not merely a person who survived the storm of a broken family. She's someone who transcended it, put down roots, and created something genuine, a life of her own, a metamorphosis that is inspiring as much as it is genuine. Precisely the tale Sister Wives viewers had been waiting to witness. And in the meantime, the thing that formerly appeared to be Kody and Robyn's greatest reward, their transition into monogamy. The very option that once seemed peace. What was initially marketed as stability soon proved to be a trap. The so-called new beginning in Kody and Robyn's marriage gradually became a lonely, highly managed life, one in which almost everything was about their needs, with very little room left in the family for anyone else. Initially, fans thought it was the long-awaited getaway from the tumult of plural marriage. But as the months went by, the behind-the-scenes reality was much bleaker than what audiences saw on television. Kody, no longer at the head of a household of sister wives, grew more and more possessive. And Robyn, his closest wife, began to lose the very authority she thought she'd gained. Her longtime victim persona became more entrenched. She framed herself as the misunderstood one, a mother who gave everything to keep her family safe, a woman struggling to keep love from slipping away. But sooner or later, the charade started to break apart. The disparities in the way Kody treated her children compared to those from his other wives stood out glaringly. Consider Isabel's surgery, for instance. It elicited tremendous sympathy and support from the fans, as well as Kody himself. But Dayton's emotional anguish, just as authentic, just as immense, was quietly set aside, downplayed, or simply ignored. Fans took notice, and they were not pleased. Why was Isabel's hurt given national crisis treatment, and Dayton's unvoiced hurt essentially ignored? That unstated yet potent double standard spoke volumes. Kody and Robyn's bond wasn't fueled by love, it was fueled by control. And the fissures were widening. Public opinion began to shift. Others viewed their dynamic for what it really was. Constrictive, one way, and based on fear instead of love. Robyn's children, who had been initially attached to their half-siblings, gradually lost touch. Assigned roles they hadn't requested, they became victims of collateral damage in a family conflict they didn't initiate. The last straw came when Robyn herself couldn't ignore the reality anymore. This wasn't her dream come true. She had invested everything in building an image, an illusion of love and harmony, an idea that monogamy would at last provide peace. And yet, instead, she was in the midst of something much more hurtful: isolation, silent resentment, and a profound feeling of loss. The cost of control had been too great. What had originally been felt as safety had proven to be an illusion. Robyn's subtle confession was a wake-up call, not only for her, but for all of us viewers who had watched the Browns for more than a decade. It reminded us all of an uncomfortable truth. When you cling too tightly to something because you are afraid, when love is a show and not a connection, the price isn't merely disillusionment, it's isolation. And that is the true heartbreak.